There we go. All right, we're live. So, first off, huge shout out to Propensity and Follows for making this research and also webinar free and openly available to everyone. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Quickly, Eric, if we can jump to the next slide. So today's webinar is going to be around a new piece of research that Eric actually conducted. So I'm not going to steal any of his thunder, and he's really going to drive all things on the webinar today. But quickly, when it comes to ForgeX, for those who might be new to us, we are a market research and advisory firm. So we help organizations modernize their ABM programs, modernize their marketing teams, and we are really leaning in on AI from a research perspective. So a couple things, I'll drop some links in the chat. One, if you're not already, come join our private community. We have over 1,000 ABM and go-to-market leaders. It is completely free to join. And we kick out anyone, especially on the vendor side or the sales side, who is pitching. We also have our full research library. I will throw that in the chat as well. Go subscribe to our weekly newsletter. We are always sharing some research bits there. And with that, Eric, I will send it over your way for a brief introduction and to really get things rolling on our webinar.
All right. Let's do that first little, Davis, you hear me, you see me, my config is correct. Awesome. Thanks everybody for joining. Excited to go through the results. What we're going to share today is based on a survey that was run earlier this year. And there are a few places where we're going to go ahead and add some commentary of like what we're hearing from people since, what the anecdotes are. But we're really going to try and use this time to lean into the numbers, what we actually saw from people who reported back, what they're doing, what's working for them. The survey was fielded around the start of the year, and we had just under 200 responses. Most of the charts will have a N on them. Most of them are at 189 after we went through and did all of the cleaning on the responses. So that's the pool that we're looking at here, a mix of people from ABM and demand gen or broader marketing backgrounds, and from a wide range of company sizes, with kind of our biggest spot being those companies that are in that 500 to 5,000 kind of solid mid-market, lower enterprise range. All right, with that, let's go ahead and get started. So I said we're going to focus on the survey results. I'm going to add a wrinkle to that. The folks who reported that they are getting better results from ABM, we said, hey, has this made a big difference for your business, for the results that you're getting? Those people see about 3 times higher results in terms of impact on conversion or pipeline, those business metrics. Over here on the far left side of the chart, the people who are seeing the best results overall and everybody else, they're both saying that we're moving a lot faster than we used to because of AI. But if you go to the far right-hand side of this chart, you see only 18% of the everybody else pool is saying that they're seeing higher conversion, higher pipeline. 57%, about 3x, are seeing that higher conversion, higher pipeline if they're saying that their AI investment is having a significant impact on their ABM programs and results. And so rather than just report, here's the average of everybody, what we're going to focus on today is first, what are those companies doing different from everybody else? What differentiates them in the actual programs, the activities, the ways of working, things that maybe we can steal and take away or check ourselves against to ensure that we're doing. And then because there were some other things that were just really interesting to me in the survey, that's going to be the first section. And then we're going to have a little bonus at the end where we get a little bit more about the technology that people are using and how they're approaching technology, as well as my favorite kind of surprising stat from the whole survey that I couldn't bear to just leave out of the slides that we're going to go through today. So that's in a little bonus section at the end. But first, we're going to dive in and look at what makes these top performers, the ones seeing the best results, actually different in how they're behaving and what they're doing. The first piece here is an AI roadmap. It is by far the biggest difference between companies that are those high performers seeing big impact and everyone else who responded in the survey. Now, I don't want to imply here that, okay, everybody go build a roadmap because that's the thing that makes a difference. The ability to create a roadmap that you can execute against within a marketing team is actually catching a lot of the things that in those anecdotal conversations we're finding are critically important. First, you can't create a roadmap if you don't have organizational support for resources to actually go do something with what you put out there. You can't really create something and get everyone aligned around this is what we're doing if you don't have a named leader. In conversations that both Davis and I have had over the course of the last quarter or so, a named marketing AI leader, someone who is has meaningful responsibility for driving that ship forward, is a huge difference maker between people's ability to drive adoption and change results versus the companies that may have significant investments financially that they're making. They're kind of floundering on getting the value out of those investments. It also means that there's a planning process. There's a process to identify where we believe AI can have a meaningful impact and ensure that we are then building or acquiring the tools that we need to go capture that impact. And then finally, and this is the one I am seeing more and more, is as we all rush to bring AI capabilities into our teams, sometimes we're lagging on training and enablement. If we were to think about what we're doing from an AI perspective, more of the way that we think in our product team and our customer success team about rolling out a capability and then enabling our team to support our customers and our customers to use that capability, that is oftentimes a missing piece as we roll out new AI features and capabilities. And that drives a lack of adoption within our teams internally, which means that we don't get the impact that we potentially could. So take this AI roadmap. Yes, it's the number one difference. And I think it's the number one difference because it rolls up so many different important things for an organization to see the kind of impact that many of us are expecting AI to have on our business. As we go, I can't see questions as they come in because I've got too many screens and too many windows taken over. So if you've got questions, Davis is going to be monitoring questions as we go. We'll also have time at the end, but he's promised to interrupt me if there's anything that we need to pause on and dive into here as we go. The next big difference, high performers are using AI in more channels. On average, they're using 54% more channels AI enabled than everybody else in the survey. So we have that diligence, the planning, the budget, the organization, and coming out of that diligence that lets us create and execute against a roadmap, we're giving ourselves the ability to make use of AI in more places across our marketing. Across everybody, email and advertising, most widely adopted. No big surprise here, particularly on the email front. The big difference, biggest point difference here is on personalized landing pages. This is nearly as widely adopted by high performers using AI to personalize landing pages and experiences as email, same as digital advertising, and yet it lags significantly behind for the other group. So, shout out to our sponsors that enable some of these kinds of capabilities, right? This is one of those things that is low-hanging fruit based on where people are able to use AI, but is being missed still by let's call it the average or the follower set of companies here. And then we see some other places where it may not be as obvious where AI is used in direct mail until you actually get in and start using AI more broadly across your organization. And so this is where once you start seeing other possibilities. How do we use AI to improve workflows around direct mail, to create lists, to personalize content? There's lots of opportunities to use AI, but it's one that overall has lower adoption in those kinds of channels, those high performers are way more likely to be the ones that are already adopting AI in those channels. This one surprised me a little bit. High performers are pushing the limits of what their organizations allow. Now, I was at Topo about 10 years ago when we first started doing stuff around ABM. From a research perspective, I was the lead analyst on all of the early ABM benchmarks, research models there. And I would have seen the opposite results. Corporate limitations were something that were holding back laggards, not holding back the high performers. This is the opposite. The corporate limitations are holding back the top performers. The people, everybody else, they're not hitting those limitations yet at all. And I think that illustrates just how early we are in this whole set of changes and change management we're going through. Is if I had asked this question or coming out of conversations a decade ago, and I'm thinking about ABM tools and are they integrated with my map? Are they integrated with my CRM? I can't get the full results that I expect to have because I'm held back by these kinds of constraints. Those were the laggards that were held back. The high performing companies weren't having a problem getting those kinds of things in place. They weren't having a problem with corporate governance, keeping them from getting the basics of integrations, the basics of skill set and training. Here, it's so early that we are going ahead of what our organizations allow. And so here we see that of our high performers, a third are saying, governance holds me back. Only a quarter of everyone else is saying governance is holding me back. So here we're seeing real clearly the high performing organizations are running out ahead of oftentimes what their own company is ready to support. They're pushing on those boundaries. That's also why we're seeing, didn't pull this chart in, but if you download the full report, you'll see this there as well. They are the ones most likely to say that integrations are a challenge because they're looking to use more data. They're looking to connect to more endpoints, and that's holding them back in terms of what they can do. They're also more likely to be constrained by skills. That one's surprising to me as well on first blush, but they're the ones that are pushing the limits and therefore pushing the limits of what their team is able to do. And because they're the ones that are pushing the limit there, they're seeing those skill challenges show up earlier than everyone else. So I think this really shows kind of how early we are and how the ability of AI is moving faster than, in many cases, our organizations are ready to support us in using.
Eric, quick question from Aaron. What is the profile of orgs that this data comes from? And what size of deals are ABM teams in the study seeking to land?
We didn't ask about deal sizes in particular. Hey, Aaron, I recognize that face. Should have said which Aaron. Uh,
What's happening with like
yeah. Because I know who the companies are, I'm going to say, hey, these are mostly what you're going to call enterprise type deals. This is not a PLG motion. There are some brands in there that are selling mid-market, those 5K to 50K deals. But there's a hell of a lot in there that are selling those 50 and above, 100 and above deals. The typical company size here is over 500 employees is the biggest segment we have of responses. We've got a very small slice of small companies. Under 50 is like a fifth, just under of the survey sample. Everything else is 50 and above. Again, that 500 to 5,000 is the single biggest segment of responses.
Nice, thanks, Eric. Did you guys see any variance in industry clusters around how teams like say in older school industries like manufacturing, industrial did different from your traditional high tech orgs who are well equipped with ABM programs?
We were about 70% tech, and so there wasn't enough to break down the other industries into anything other than tech, non-tech. What we saw
Yeah.
tech, non-tech is actually not much difference. In some cases, non-tech is actually ahead of the typical tech firms. Generally, they're right there paired. There wasn't enough meaningful difference across most of the metrics to make it worth breaking them out. Now, part of that is probably some sample bias. You don't come into ForgeX, you don't follow Davis, you're not paying attention to these kinds of things. If you're an old school marketing organization and a manufacturing company that's got your head in the sand, right? And so I do think that if you were to go do like old school phone survey type stuff for truly random samples, we would see more of a difference. But the ones that are leaning in already outside of tech are not having any more challenges or not any further behind than their tech peers. Cool.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. I'm an old analyst and analytics guy, and so I kind of this maybe is my second favorite outcome from the survey. Um, They're going ahead with all of this despite a relatively terrifying, given what we're used to in kind of demand and ABM driven environments, lack of hard business metrics. We're about 15% of people across the survey, and still only one in five of our high performing segment who say they have at least a strong ability to measure or quantify the ROI of an AI investment. Can you imagine that coming for a different type of program investment that you're making? That number is kind of off the charts. It's a little probably terrifying to someone like a demand gen leader or an ops leader who's looking at programs and what's the ROI of programs and now thinking about adding AI as a investment line in their budget, right? We're used to having much clearer results in the demand oriented, demand ABM field, integrated campaigns, rolling all those together side of marketing. Yeah, full ability, that's out there. But a lot of people typically say they have a pretty strong ability to measure results. These numbers show that we're not there yet with AI. That's not that surprising, but it's true even of our high performer group. And despite those measurement challenges, they're still successfully making the case to invest in AI. They're making the case to the people, the tools, the time, energy, and effort that goes into making AI available across more channels to fighting those internal compliance battles, integration battles, things like that, to get the capabilities that they need, and having the organizational structure, the leaders, the rules of engagement around how they use AI, the budget, the ownership in order to make those kinds of investments. Those are not trivial things to get done in many organizations today. And what we're seeing pretty clearly is despite imperfect metrics, people aren't waiting for perfection. They're able to share the anecdotal stories. They're able to share the pre-post, what they're able to do in order to make the case. One of my favorite metrics here, not even a metric, one of my favorite ways to tell this story here, though, that I'm seeing is this is what we were able to do before, and this is what we weren't able to do before. Account research is a great example. You're doing deep account research, but it's only happening for 10, 15, 20% of the accounts you think it should be happening for. It's sitting in the hands of sales to do, or it's sitting in the hand of an ABM or field marketing team to do within their assigned patch, but their patch is too big to get through all of them. So this manual process just doesn't have the coverage that you want it to have. Bringing in an AI solution to drive that account research process may take you suddenly from 20% coverage to 60 to 80% coverage of what you wish was actually happening. And now, given that you already know that's a process that is critically important to you as a business, it's why you put it in place in the first place, making that case that we went from 20% to 75% shows a really clear impact, even though we haven't been able to get down to quantifying ROI quite yet of it. So think about those kinds of things, the things that you know you should do, the things that you plan to do, but didn't have the ability to do at scale. How do I go through and show that I've changed what I can execute? Not just that I can go faster, but that I've changed what I can fundamentally execute because of AI to help to continue to make that case. All right. With that, we're going to move into bonus territory if there's no other questions.
We have another Aaron question.
Well, Aaron's going to have 3 questions on every slide. I worked with the guy for years. I know
I'm gonna
this.
try not to ask you too many, but yeah, no, I mean this is really straightforward about the tactics. I don't know, Davis, you want to read the question? Yeah, go ahead.
No, Aaron, please feel free.
Well, look, at the end of the day, the best ABM teams have figured out a bill of materials to support their sales or their sales teams with, and they could be 5 items, they could be 10 items, whatever. You call them plays, call them tactics, whatever you will. But I'm curious, as you guys talked and had even more qualitative conversations potentially with some of these orgs, did anything bubble up that some of these high performers are doing differently? And I have a slightly skewed perspective based on what I'm doing around financially defensible business cases, and if that's something that's starting to surface. But is there anything that surfaced that these high performers are doing differently to drive higher quality pipeline that converts at higher rates or accelerates deals, in that later stage?
I think the one of the themes through is the level of personalization. So I mentioned that account research. Great, account research. One of the problems with it before was it got done and it sat on the shelf, right? And so now it's not just account research, it's taking the account research, pulling that into a process, having recommendations, drafting materials. We used to talk a lot about things like a customized case study or customized piece of content. Um, that suddenly is almost easy to do. And so those kinds of things are a big change in what people are even able to execute. The companies that are doing it really well have figured out how to actually make that a process all the way through. So it's not just I did account research or I did used AI to write better emails. I'm like, okay, those two things actually need to be closely connected, right? Getting the workflow down, the process down, or even the fully agentic solution down so it does that for me end to end. Otherwise, the risk that is showing up is that you do a lot that you were trying to do before, but your process downstream isn't fully ready for it. And so it ends up being a lot of work that sat on that cutting room floor. The other one that I'd flag for you, and this is a little earlier stage, not seeing it as often yet, but in the companies that are really pushing forward, particularly that small to mid-sized company. So let's say, up to about 500 employees, is if you've got a team that is kind of builder oriented, you've got 4 to 12 marketers on that team, and they're all doing things. Everyone's built their own brand voice bot. Everyone's built their own landing page built. We're starting to have a lot of overlap in what we built as personal tools. And now we're all recreating the wheel. This is where I go back to the roadmap, not from a top-down prioritization, but from a bottom-up. What are the things that everyone's doing? Now they need to be created and maintained centrally, right? And so I'm starting to see more companies go, you know what? How we actually do a better job of cataloging everything that we're creating as individuals and then kind of bringing that back together, rationalizing what we have, and choosing which ones we build out in a way that they become accessible to more people. If I've got something to create emails, you know what? It's not just the BDR team who should be using it. It probably is 2/3 the BDR team that actually is using it. So, how do I get that out into the hands of my sales team? What does that need to be like from an experience perspective for them to make use of it? How do I have that feedback collection? How do I iterate on it so it's not everybody created their own thing that is falling out of date on context, falling out of date on messaging, everything else?
That makes sense. Yeah, I know only a few more minutes, so I'll let you guys keep running it.
All right. Yeah. Just like Aaron, I told Davis we are going to keep this to 30 and then questions, just like Aaron to make me go over. Thanks,
We have
buddy.
one. We have another bonus one. Hey, Jessica. This one's from Jessica Fuel. She asked, so did you get into how people are achieving these workflows, build versus buy?
We did not a lot. There's a little bit coming up in a couple slides that just goes into um, how many people are really looking to build. I think of it as builder or proprietary versus purchasing packaged software, uh, either AI native or using what's in their other solutions. So bear with us for, I think, one slide, and we'll have a couple numbers for you on that, Jess.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. This was my favorite outcome from the entire survey. High performers are the most optimistic about the future. So I'm going to share this and I'm going to go back again and compare to early ABM days, a decade or so ago, for the contrast. Here, the companies that are already seeing the best results, they're the ones up here, are the ones who are most likely to see results continue to increase over the course of the next 8 to 12 months. Meanwhile, the companies that are down here, they're not very optimistic that they're going to be getting up to here. This is the challenge that the laggards have on achieving results and kind of getting this flywheel started. And this is another indicator of how early we are in this. Said, I'm going to go back to my old ABM days when I was working with SaaS companies at Topo and people were trying to get started with ABM oftentimes for the first time, or more often for the second time after a first time failure. Companies that were already doing it well, they were here, they expected results to improve. Companies coming in and looking to invest, the expectations were off the charts. They expected that 60 days later, they were going to be all the way up here. Companies who weren't getting the results yet expected significant results from ABM investments. We're not seeing that yet in AI. We're seeing the companies that are not getting the results yet are struggling to see a path forward to results. And here's where, drawing on the experience that I have personally, and I think many of us have personally as well, the more you use it, the more you start to see the potential and the possibilities of the other things you could do. And I think this is what creates this flywheel of once I'm seeing meaningful results, I suddenly have so many more ideas about other things I could be doing that are going to continue to drive that drive that trajectory. If I haven't gotten started on that yet, I'm struggling to imagine what my next step is. And I'm struggling to imagine what I'm going to do that's going to drive significant results in the coming quarters. And this is, of everything that we have here, probably the biggest argument for the just get started advice. Because that experience of just doing it, of finding those little initial wins, are so important. And if you're in one of those organizations, because we don't tell people to change jobs on this webinar, if you're in one of those organizations where you're struggling to get going, there's not the organizational support, what can you do within your own little area to not just use AI in ways that make a difference in your work, but to highlight the work that you're doing and the impact that it's having so you can start to build some recognition in the organization of the impact that it can have. All right, I promised more on tech. So let's go. Incumbent tech has an advantage. This is really clear. While most marketers expect a hybrid tech stack going forward, hybrid here being a mix of AI from their existing traditional marketing tech vendors, the Salesforces, demand bases, Marketos, whatnot of the world, or AI native tools, the writers, the Jaspers, things along those lines. That's the stack most people are expecting to end up with. But what's really notable here is the existing vendor AI as the preferred approach is number 2 in the list. The AI native tools as the preferred approach is dead last in the list. And so if you are at a vendor that is a new AI native solution, and you're already feeling this pain, you're needing to sell against Salesforce's claims about what they do, Marketo's claims about what they do. And chances are, I get all those BDR emails. Chances are you're already doing this, trying to point out the difference between what you are doing and what is claimed but not actually working in these other more traditional solutions. The other big trend here, Jessica, a little bit more to your point, is the proprietary line. Small companies, they're just building anything they can, small team, easy to do on their own. Big companies, though, we're seeing a bias towards proprietary tools. I have not seen this in doing surveys and tracking marketing technology broadly outside of the very largest companies historically. Maybe the Oracles and the SAPs have a little bit of this kind of bias, but most companies at that 5,000 employee point are heavily using existing traditional vendors in their marketing tech stack. And so what we're seeing here is that bar for who can build first is dropping so that there's a lot more companies that are able to look at internal builds, either light and fast on the small companies, but also places that require more robust builds. That is becoming more accessible because of AI. And that's changing how people are looking at budgets. The only group expecting their ABM tech budgets to decrease more often than increase is those proprietary builders. Conversely, everybody who's going that hybrid approach, they're the ones that are most likely to expect those tech budgets to be increasing in the future. So if you're out there, you've got an AI native solution, there are budget increases available, there is budget available for new solutions. You're selling against those incumbents and their claims, but there is budget, as we all see when you say, oh, we make AI possible. There is budget available for new vendors and new capabilities across lots of these organizations. No, for anyone on the vendor space, we don't release a list of the companies that responded to this survey. All right, that is my last slide. What do we have for questions or wrap up now that we're going to start losing people? Jessica, how poorly or well did I answer your question?
That was good. I think what I'm seeing is a lot of folks are struggling with, do we build our own thing or do we go with one of the solutions on the market? And the problem is if they go the proprietary route, they're going to build exactly what they want, and they're never going to find a prepackaged solution that does everything that they need, right? But on the flip side, maintaining proprietary workflows and stuff is a lot of work, right? So now you've got to hire somebody on top of those solutions to stay on top of them to make sure they're updated with new releases and those sorts of things. And so I don't know. I was definitely going the way of like, people are going to build their own stuff. And then I'm swung back a little bit like, no, they're going to buy stuff. And it's really hard to say where it's going to land.
Yeah, I think the SAPs of the world have always had the the budget, but more importantly, the staff, the development resources, the ability to build enterprise class in terms of reliability, monitoring, accessibility, things along those lines. My take on that is that for the most part, this is just lowering the bar at who can do it, but it doesn't take it all the way down. And then the small companies that are looking to build their own, they're just looking to hack it. Most of them are building stuff that will not survive 3 months post departure of the primary builder. They're going to need
Mhm.
to rebuild, recreate, because they're not building with traditional kind of discipline for application development. And even though AI makes application development a lot easier, there are still some of those disciplines that you're going to need and those resources you're going to need for monitoring, maintenance, ongoing development, right? And so that's where, to me, yes, these samples aren't huge, but we got 50 plus in each of these. That 3% in the 500 to 5,000 to me is kind of the telling number of when you get to the point where you really require more robust capabilities, building your own internally is not nearly as attractive until you get much larger and can have dedicated marketing oriented development and maintenance type teams. Talking to friends and former colleagues at companies in the 50,000 plus employee range, and they've got teams within marketing dedicated to these kinds of things in order to support and maintain those builds. But in, below 5,000 employees, most people don't have that kind of resourcing and development available directly to the marketing team.
Got it. Makes sense.
Thanks. All right. Now officially open for questions. And we've gone 8 minutes over. So thanks for everybody who stayed on. We did book this as an hour. I was talking to Davis before this, and I personally have a strong belief that nobody wants to sit through an hour of content on a webinar. So what we're trying to do with these webinars in general is we want to keep our content to around 30 minutes or less, and then be available for questions, open group discussion, whatever makes the most sense for people who want to stay on after that.
Eric, I'll throw you another question if you got a moment for it.
Let's go.
So, you, Davis, and the crew there have been studying ABM in organizations for years now, right? And, I mean, the standard commentary with most folks in marketing for any length of time is ABM is becoming the default marketing motion, right? It's just good marketing these days, right? So, what's really new now that we need to be doing and thinking about over the next 2 quarters here? I mean, in light of the buy versus build, challenges we're running into, in light of the fact that, marketing orgs are being, tasked with doing more with less. Buyers are smarter, they're, none of this is all that new, but the question just becomes, like the highest rung organizations, step out of marketing, step into go-to-market orgs who are driving sales, booking pipeline that, closes into deals and revenue. What can we learn, or what are you guys seeing that we can learn from those orgs? And if it all differs, by company size, what does that sound like?
I think one of the biggest things I'm seeing is, and I mentioned this on that roadmap slide, the training and enablement, for instance. The benefit of across organizations is not uniformly distributed. What's more interesting is the benefit is not uniformly distributed within organizations. And that's where you have, let's call it 10, depending on the company, between 10 and 25% of people on a team who are going to be pretty AI forward. You have maybe that many more who are willing to follow. And then you've got a bunch of people that are being largely left behind. So, how do I get them into the second pool? I'm not going to make them part of the first pool. That's okay. So, that's my training, enablement, upskilling. That's being really open organizationally about how it's working, how it's not, sharing what you created, even if it's little, and getting people's feedback, getting people jumping in, right? But the other thing is making it accessible. We have a little bit of the problem that let's pick on Bombora for a moment. Way back when we first started working with Bombora, you got a flat file once a week with your information, right? It was really hard to make use of that effectively. We're doing, and they've moved way beyond that. Not picking on Bombora here at all today for what they're doing. They've moved way beyond that. We've moved way beyond that in terms of our ability to operationalize intent data across a huge swath of both the marketing and sales team, right? What's happening right now is it feels like we're back in that flat CSV file. It's a pain in the ass if you're not leaning forward, really comfortable using AI to start to get those benefits. This is an example I shared with somebody the other day. can I just have a slash command through integrations in Slack that triggers an offline process that uses AI to create a piece of research, account research, what's going on within this company, and some recommended outreach sequences that can be the starting point? Well, guess what? I don't have to think about using AI to make use of that. Oh, I can do that also in a command in the Claude chat interface, not in CoWork, not in code, but I can do that with a command in the chat interface. And once I can do that there, now somebody who is more comfortable can work directly with AI with the output of that in order to ask additional questions, get the summaries that they need, change the drafts, things along those lines. But can I do things that make it more accessible to the way people are already comfortable working? That's not what the average I'm building for my own use person in the organization is going to do. That's what you end up building when you go, okay, this is a priority and we want everyone to be able to get the benefit of it. How do I actually have to make that capability available to my users so it works in their workflows and so it works with their existing skill sets?
So it's that democratization of access to the best thinking of how AI is getting used, married with the innovators in the org who are actually bringing new ways of doing things that the org couldn't do before. So it's sort of marrying that up. Whether you're a big org and you're investing in the saunas of the world to systematize that, or whether you're, Claude for Business or whatever the heck these things are, right? Right. But basically, it's the aggregation. Plus, it sounds like the training too, right? I mean, if I'm
It's that
hearing you right, there's
training
a
and
training component
accessibility.
here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, why does everyone have an iframe in Salesforce if they have a tool that they want sales to use? Because supposedly that makes it easier. Increasingly, they're going to not just a iframe, native applications, getting the data in natively to Salesforce so it's right there where somebody's working, or into a Salesloft Gong outreach, right? Well, I go, we've got amazing new AI capabilities for you. Just go to this tool that you've never used before and use it like this to do things you've never tried to do before in terms of a way of working. We're kind of throwing out everything that we've learned about new tools, new capabilities, and organizational adoption over the last couple decades. And so, what can we do to, one, bring people forward from a comfort perspective, but two, where is the team? Where do we expect them to be? And what do we expect in terms of adoption? We may need to think about ways that actually give us the benefit of those AI solutions to members of the team that aren't ready to engage with something that feels like AI. It's very possible to do today. It is not what the AI forward builder creates for their own personal use within the organization at all. Vastly different build.
Yeah.
Eric, this is.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Aaron.
No, please go ahead. Go
Hi,
ahead. Jump in.
hi, my name is Reagan Yeldell. I am do marketing as well, and my experience has been on the large company side. And Eric, you mentioned something earlier that resonated with me, and I just want to get your take on this. It's been my experience that particularly within large companies, there's the old adage, large companies move slow, right? And you know, it, it's a bit of a wild, wild west, right? Especially when you have large organizations. There sometimes can be little bits of turf wars. Let's be clear
Yep.
about that. And how have you seen organizations, particularly, in the marketing and sales functions, get over that? Let me give you an example. So, I lead demand gen from a marketing perspective, and I'm very well entrenched in sales. And so, but the overall company is still trying to figure out the AI strategy, right? So that's kind of the overall company. But meanwhile, you got homegrown pockets, each doing their own thing. So for me and my team, right? So we have our own prompt library, right? We're trying to, be process oriented, from an account list perspective. So we're not creating the same thing over and over again. Let's have a prompt library so all of the account research and things like that is done the same. Well, okay, we want to your point, I think, Aaron, democratize that. but oh, well, that's not the standard tool, and has this been approved, and all these types of things. It's like we're just trying to do good work, guys. You know what I'm saying? Let's get away from all of this. Is it standard? So how have you seen organizations get out of their own way when it comes to unifying to get to some of the results you're seeing in these slides?
Um, It depends. And in big companies, it depends a lot more on not just what you're allowed to use, but also in how tightly that's controlled or what the limitations are in how it's used. So almost nobody has a problem, even if the company thinks that, the company corporate policy says, don't use AI, don't put any information in. Okay, I'm going to go use AI to review K's and Q's, press releases, content on their website, tell it almost nothing about myself and my own business, and give me a purely public profile of that company. Okay, that's pretty accessible, right? And I don't need connectivity to any internal tools, things along those lines. And so, what is that is kind of figuring out what the rules are and where I can start building those kinds of capabilities. I've seen that, like, okay, folks, let's stop trying to boil the ocean. Let's go find a couple of those low-hanging fruit capabilities that everybody agrees are not actually problems for us from a compliance perspective, from a regulatory perspective. But getting to some sort of corporate solution at large companies, oftentimes it's going to be co-work. Please get people to the upgraded version of Copilot. Sorry, please get people to the upgraded version of Copilot because the free one is not worth having, in my non-professional opinion. But start building some place where people have access. I personally believe that you are better off most of the time building in Copilot with corporate approval than you are building in Claude without. Not that Claude isn't going to be able to do more, but some of the things that an enterprise license lets you do, sharing skills, sharing resources, creating once, not just in a prompt library where you all are sharing the prompt library offline, but if I was working with you in Claude, for instance, and you guys were on a Claude team or enterprise plan, I'd want to take that prompt library, turn a lot of them into skills in Claude, and make those skills available to everybody on the team. So now it's more directly in the workflow, and it's not something where I'm expecting people to break into a different place, go to my Notion or go to my SharePoint or go to wherever I'm housing all of those shared prompts. And so in many cases, it does pain me to say, my first corporate experience with AI was with Copilot, and it was not particularly charming. But we could do a lot because of the shared capabilities there versus what we were able to do in our private OpenAI or Anthropic subscriptions.
Thank you. That's helpful.
All right. Thanks all. We've burned almost the entire hour. Appreciate it. If anyone's got questions, or anyone just says, hey, this is a topic that I'd love to discuss, I'd love to share some of what we're doing, hit up Davis and myself. I've got one of the world's most unusual names. So if you can spell it, you can find me easily on LinkedIn. Hit up myself for Davis if you want to just share what you're doing. Would love to hear from you and hear more of your own stories as to what's working in your organizations. Davis, over to you to close us out.
Thanks so much, Eric. That was awesome. Thank you everyone for joining as well. Just tossed in a link for our community. We have, again, over 1,000 ABM and go-to-market leaders in there. We can continue our conversation in there also. And with that being said, that concludes our webinar. Join us next month. I think we're going to have an AI build session where we'll actually get in the weeds on building with some of these tools. So that will be really fun. Other than that, have an awesome rest of the week, and we'll catch you all in our community.
Thank you all. Thank you, Davis.
See you, everybody.